Isabella sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Sterling mansion, her hand resting lightly on the swell of her belly. 7 months pregnant, she could feel her baby shifting beneath her fingers, a gentle reminder of life and vulnerability in the gilded cage she called home. The mansion itself was a monument to wealth, marble floors that gleamed under crystal chandeliers, walls adorned with priceless artwork, and servants who moved silently through the rooms, but no amount of luxury could mask the tension simmering in the air. Marcus Sterling, her husband and a billionaire known for his iron will and public charm, paced the expansive living room. From the outside, they appeared perfect, the smiling socialite, the doting husband, the image of a flawless power couple. But behind closed doors, Marcus' control was suffocating. His temper flared over trivialities, his dismissive remarks chipped away at her confidence, and his eyes often held a cold calculation that left Isabella feeling small and unseen. She had tried to ignore the warning signs at first, the subtle belittling comments, the insistence that she prioritize appearances over comfort, but the anxiety gnawed at her steadily. Tonight, as the city lights glimmered through the frost-covered windows, Isabella felt a creeping unease settle over her. Something about Marcus' distance, the tight line of his jaw, and the way he barely glanced at her made her heart tighten. She sensed danger, a storm beneath the surface, and knew that no amount of wealth could shield her from it. The fragile veneer of luxury could not hide the growing threat. The wind outside began to howl like a living creature, rattling the windows of the Sterling mansion. News alerts flashed across the smart screens scattered throughout the home. An unprecedented ice storm was bearing down on the city, with roads closing and temperatures plunging to dangerous lows. Isabella felt a sharp, unfamiliar ache twist through her abdomen, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. She reached for Marcus, hoping he would notice her discomfort, but he barely looked up from his phone. "It's nothing," he said dismissively, eyes flicking toward the storm outside. "You're overreacting. Stay in the garage. I have business to handle." Isabella's mouth fell open, disbelief and fear mingling in her chest. The garage? She had barely walked through it in months. It was unheated, isolated, and exposed to the brutal winter night. "Marcus, it hurts," she pleaded, voice trembling. "I feel something's wrong." He shook his head impatiently, dismissing her concerns as trivial and dramatic. The storm intensified outside, the wind slamming against the mansion like a warning she could not ignore. Yet Marcus' arrogance and obsession with control blinded him. He insisted she remain where he had ordered, while he attended to his business matters as if her pain and the life she carried were irrelevant. Isabella's heart pounded, and a wave of fear settled over her. She was utterly alone in a situation that could turn dangerous in minutes. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, but no warmth could reach the growing anxiety in her chest. Isabella stepped into the garage, her boots crunching against the icy concrete. The vast space, usually a place to store cars and household equipment, felt like a prison in the biting cold. Snowflakes had blown in through gaps in the garage doors, dusting the floor with a thin, icy layer. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering uncontrollably as goosebumps rose across her skin. Her coat was no match for the freezing air, and every breath felt sharp and painful. The baby stirred inside her, tiny kicks pressing against her ribs, reminding her of her fragility. Each movement, instead of offering comfort, amplified her sense of vulnerability. How had Marcus, the man she had trusted, married, and loved, left her here, exposed to the elements in such a critical moment? Her chest tightened with a mix of fear, betrayal, and disbelief. The cold crept into her bones, and she tried to find a semblance of warmth by curling into a corner near a stack of boxes, wrapping a thin blanket she had grabbed from the house around herself. Her teeth chattered, and her limbs trembled with uncontrollable shivers. Panic bubbled in her chest, making each second stretch into eternity. She pressed her hands against her belly, whispering, "Please, stay strong, please." The icy air seemed endless, and the baby's movements, once gentle and reassuring, now reminded her of the danger they were both in. Every heartbeat, every gust of wind, intensified her terror, leaving her feeling isolated, powerless, and desperate in the unheated garage. Isabella's hands shook as she dialed Marcus' number for the 10th time, her voice cracking with desperation. Each ring felt like an eternity, and every unanswered call hammered the reality into her chest. He wasn't coming. She tried texting, pleading with simple messages, "Please come, I need help, it hurts," but no reply came. Her contractions, initially sporadic, began to intensify, stabbing through her abdomen like fire. Every breath was a struggle, and she clutched at the steering wheel of her emotions, trying not to succumb to panic. Her mind raced. What if the baby came here? What if she couldn't make it? The thought of dying alone in the cold garage made her chest tighten and tears sting her eyes. Every second that passed felt deadly, dragging out the agony of isolation. She tried to focus on something, anything, to steady herself, but the icy walls pressed in, suffocating her courage. The reality of her situation was terrifying. No warmth, no help, only the ruthless cold and her growing labor pains. Her world had shrunk to this bleak space, her body, and the life inside her, and she knew with a sinking heart that each moment could tip the balance between survival and disaster. Fear and determination warred within her, every heartbeat a countdown against the freezing storm outside and the danger creeping closer. From his private office several blocks away, Richard watched the Sterling estate through the array of thermal cameras he had installed for security. The storm outside painted the city in a blur of white, but the screens provided a clear, almost infrared map of the property. His eyes immediately fixed on a small, solitary figure in the garage, an unmistakable heat signature isolated in the freezing air. Panic surged through him as he zoomed in, confirming what his heart already feared. It was Isabella, exposed, alone, and shivering in the unheated space. His hands tightened around the edge of the desk, jaw clenching in anger and disbelief. How could Marcus, her husband, leave her in such a state, particularly while she was pregnant and vulnerable? Richard didn't pause to weigh his next steps. His protective instincts surged forward. He barked orders to the estate's security team over the phone, instructing them to prepare vehicles, warm blankets, and emergency supplies. He grabbed his own coat and prepared to drive straight through the worsening storm, unwilling to let distance or weather slow him down. Every second counted, and Richard's mind raced, balancing fear for Isabella with the fury he felt toward the man who had abandoned her. Love and determination propelled him forward, knowing that reaching her in time could mean the difference between life and tragedy. Richard's car tires crunched against the thickening layer of snow as he sped toward the Sterling mansion, headlights cutting through the icy darkness. The storm had grown more violent, the wind slamming against the windshield and making visibility nearly impossible. Every second mattered. He knew Isabella's contractions could intensify at any moment. Security personnel followed closely in separate vehicles, equipped with flashlights, blankets, and first aid kits, prepared to face the storm alongside him. Richard's heart pounded as he imagined Isabella's terror, shivering alone, and he gripped the steering wheel tightly, forcing himself to focus. The roads were treacherous, icy patches threatening to send them skidding off course, but there was no room for hesitation. Every minute delayed could put Isabella and her unborn child in danger. He visualized her curled in the corner of the garage, trembling, her breath visible in the freezing air, and it spurred him to push harder, navigating carefully but swiftly. Emergency services were notified, and a medical team stood ready to meet them upon arrival. As he barreled through the storm, Richard's mind was singularly focused. Nothing would stop him from reaching his daughter and ensuring both she and her baby survived this ordeal. The storm's fury was formidable, but it could not match a father's resolve. Richard stormed into the mansion's grand foyer, his coat still dusted with snow and ice from the storm outside. Marcus, reclining in an expensive leather chair with a drink in hand, barely looked up as Richard approached. "What did you do to her?" Richard demanded, voice low but icy with fury. Marcus shrugged nonchalantly, a smirk curling at the corner of his lips. "She's fine. Probably overreacting." "You're making a mountain out of a molehill," he said dismissively, clearly more concerned with maintaining composure than addressing reality. Richard's eyes narrowed. "Fine? She's alone in your garage in the middle of a blizzard, pregnant and in pain. Do you have any idea how close she was to dying out there?" The mansion seemed to shrink around them, the storm outside amplifying the tension. Marcus waved him off, focusing instead on his own discomfort and image. "She'll be okay. Stop dramatizing." "I have obligations, important obligations," he said coldly. Richard stepped closer, voice rising, fury uncontained. "Your obligations? She's your wife and the mother of your child. Do you care more about appearances than her life?" Marcus faltered slightly, realizing his cruelty was laid bare. For the first time, the weight of his obsession with power and reputation confronted him, exposing the stark truth of his negligence and selfishness. Paramedics finally arrived, their boots crunching against the snow as they approached the garage, lights flashing through the icy storm. Richard guided them swiftly, his urgency fueled by fear and anger. Isabella lay curled on the cold concrete, wrapped in a thin blanket, shivering violently and clutching her swollen belly. Every breath she took was shallow, her face pale under the dim garage lights. The medical team worked quickly, checking her vitals and preparing her for transport. Richard hovered, refusing to leave her side, ensuring the paramedics moved efficiently and safely. The storm howled around them, wind slamming against the garage doors, snow swirling into the air, adding an extra layer of peril. With careful hands, the paramedics lifted Isabella onto a stretcher, covering her with heated blankets and securing her for the ride to the hospital. Richard followed closely, his vehicle navigating the icy roads with focused intensity, heart hammering with every turn and skid. The peril of the storm mirrored the danger she had endured alone, heightening the suspense and urgency of their journey. Every second felt critical, every mile a race against time, as Richard drove with a father's determination, unwilling to let his daughter or her unborn child suffer another moment of risk. The hospital room was bright and warm, a stark contrast to the freezing garage where Isabella had spent hours in agony. Nurses moved with calm efficiency, monitoring her vitals and preparing for the delivery. Contractions still gripped her body, but the support surrounding her provided a sense of relief she had not felt in hours. With Richard at her side, holding her hand and whispering encouragement, Isabella focused on each breath, each push, summoning the strength that had carried her through the ordeal. The medical team worked tirelessly, guiding her through the final stages of labor. Finally, with one last, shuddering effort, the baby emerged, crying weakly at first but soon gaining strength. Tears streamed down Isabella's face as she heard that first, fragile wail, a sound that signified life, survival, and hope. She collapsed back onto the bed, exhausted yet overwhelmed with relief, clutching her newborn to her chest. Every scar from the night, the cold, the fear, the isolation, felt momentarily softened by the warmth and heartbeat of her child. Richard kissed her forehead gently, his pride and love shining through. Though the emotional trauma lingered, the life of her baby and the unwavering support around her transformed fear into gratitude, allowing Isabella to grasp, even briefly, a sense of safety, love, and survival she had not known in hours of peril. Richard wasted no time. From his secure office, he accessed the thermal camera footage of Isabella alone in the freezing garage. The images were clear, her small figure, shivering, vulnerable, and isolated, highlighted the full extent of Marcus' neglect. With a few clicks, the footage was shared with trusted media contacts, ensuring it would reach the public. Within hours, social media erupted. Twitter, Instagram, and news outlets were flooded with outrage. Viewers condemned Marcus for his cruelty and negligence, while Isabella was celebrated for her bravery and resilience. The hashtag Justice for Isabella began trending worldwide, capturing the anger, sympathy, and collective demand for accountability. Memes, news segments, and viral posts dissected every moment of the footage, contrasting the helplessness of a pregnant woman with the cold, indifferent attitude of a billionaire husband. Commenters called for legal action, highlighting the disparity between Marcus' wealth and his lack of humanity. International news outlets picked up the story, amplifying its reach and impact. Public opinion became a powerful force, and Marcus' carefully cultivated image of power and control started to crumble in real time. The viral exposure not only protected Isabella but also ensured that Marcus would face the consequences of his actions, cementing the incident as a global example of negligence, privilege, and the demand for justice. The fallout from Marcus' negligence was swift and merciless. Investors who had once praised his business acumen began withdrawing support, citing concerns over his judgment and ability to lead under pressure. Board members demanded explanations, scrutinizing every decision he had made in the days surrounding Isabella's ordeal. Employees whispered in hallways and behind closed doors, questioning his leadership and wondering how someone so ruthless in business could be so callous at home. Lawsuits emerged, not just from the public outrage but also from advocacy groups highlighting his disregard for family safety. Media outlets ran relentless coverage, contrasting the glamorous life Marcus had projected with the stark reality of his moral failures. Even his personal life began to crumble. Victoria, his mistress, vanished without explanation, abandoning the security and privilege she had once relied on. Marcus was left isolated, powerless, and humiliated, facing both legal and public consequences that wealth and status could no longer shield him from. The mansion that had once symbolized his dominance now felt empty, echoing the emptiness of his reputation and relationships. Every boardroom, every social circle, every corner of the city where he had wielded influence became a reminder of his fall, a testament to the consequences of cruelty and selfishness. The world that once bowed to him had turned away, leaving Marcus to confront the stark truth of his actions alone. Isabella slowly recovered in the weeks following the traumatic night. Surrounded by supportive medical staff and the steady presence of her father, she began to rebuild her strength and confidence. The ordeal had left emotional scars, but each day brought small victories, warm showers, gentle walks through the sunlight, and the tender cries of her newborn. Determined to reclaim her life, Isabella filed for divorce, citing Marcus' negligence and abuse. The legal process was swift. The court granted her full custody of the baby and a substantial alimony package, ensuring that she and her child would have security and independence. She moved into a calm, serene home far removed from the opulence and cold control of the Sterling mansion. The space radiated warmth and safety, with soft sunlight streaming through windows, and rooms that invited peace rather than intimidation. Standing by the window one crisp morning, cradling her newborn, Isabella felt a profound sense of freedom, a liberation from fear, betrayal, and control. The wind outside carried the scent of pine and snow, a reminder of the storm she had survived. Strength, hope, and love filled her heart in place of the anguish that had once threatened to consume her. With every heartbeat of her child, she realized that this was a new beginning, a life defined not by the past but by resilience, family, and the unwavering determination to protect what truly mattered. The chapters of pain were closed, replaced with a future she would write herself.